bringing your focus to the breath to gather your focus. And deciding that whatever thoughts, emotions, sensory experiences, whatever arises, that now is not the time to follow them. And just rest your focus lightly on the breath for a few moments. And as different things occur to you, say to yourself, not now. You can come back to that later. And return your focus to the breath. And setting your motivation for this session, thinking that whatever insights come, whatever clarity comes, may it be of most benefit on my spiritual path, so that I can do the most good for myself and others. Just setting that intention in your own words and letting it sink in. And so start by sitting with the premise that grasping or assuming or expecting permanence, hoping for stability, that this tendency can bring suffering to yourself. Hoping for ground to land on causes suffering when it's not there. Things might be going along very smoothly, but then there's some disruption or some change, and we're caught off guard because we expected stability. So just sit with the premise that expecting permanence is the source of some of my suffering. Sitting with that idea, seeing if it's true. And then asking yourself, is there anything physical that has stood the test of time and hasn't changed in some incremental way over the course of years? Any physical object, any body that hasn't changed? Looking at the physical world. And we see very quickly that change is a fact of all physical things. And yet some part of us assumes that physical things won't change and is distressed when they do. The first scratch on a new car, the need for the computer to be upgraded, clothes going out of style, ways of speaking, different trends, different aspects of language shifting. The house needs maintenance. So although it's obvious that physical things do change, is there some part of us that expects them not to and is distressed when they do? Is there a subtle grasping at permanence? And then thinking about relationships, we know personally that our mood and our energy level shifts constantly throughout the day. and yet somehow we expect the people around us to have some sort of consistency and stability and continuity. And when they show different aspects of themselves that are disagreeable, we're confused or upset or annoyed. They haven't met our expectation. We expected them to be stable. Does this expectation sometimes bring you grief? Is this expectation of stability reasonable and logical? And then thinking about the way the mind itself changes. Sometimes we're very clear, very focused, very reasonable. Sometimes we're clouded and distracted, worried, anxious. And yet we identify as some sort of stable entity, some fixed idea of a personality that's stable, a way of being that's stable. And we keep reinforcing this way of thinking about ourselves, this permanent personality, this fixed way of being. When in fact, every second of every day, there's a different aspect happening in our mind, different external influences, different internal emotions. And yet we project stability on the idea of ourself. And so asking yourself if sometimes this assumption of a stable, fixed self limits your ability to change. If you are the one making yourself so concrete, the ways that you'd like to change, you stop yourself from doing because of this hardwired idea you have about yourself and your mind. Or maybe you have an expectation of yourself to be at your best, and you're disappointed when you're not. Expecting some stability in yourself. Is this always reasonable? And is it true that out of all of our assumptions and expectations, the most reasonable one would be to expect change and to make peace with groundlessness? If we were to have any assumption about anything, could that be the most reasonable one? And ask yourself if it is reasonable and if it is helpful to make peace with groundlessness. And dedicate all of the mental energy you put into these thoughts to understanding the nature of life being impermanent, full of change, so that your mind is more open, flexible, and kind. And again, framing that dedication in a way that's meaningful for you and letting it hit home. And when you're ready, you can relax your attention.